Hey, what's up, everyone? We are live on another episode of Adventures in DevOps. I'm your host today, Will Button, and joining me in the studio, Puneet Gupta. And Puneet, I, I like one of the things I like instantly about this is you've said that your professional work and your personal hobbies collide, which is exactly how I ended up doing this. I remember way back in my career, someone was like, "Hey, can you fix this server for me, or can you build this website for me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, here you go." And then they said, "Great, thanks. What do I owe you?" I was like, "Wait, I can make money doing this?" And
That's
30 years later, here we are.
yeah, yeah.
So, Praneet, welcome to the show. You are the CEO and co-founder of Amber.io, right?
Amberflow.io.
Amberflow, sorry. That's the beauty of doing live is now all of a sudden everyone gets to hear how often exactly I screw up in these podcasts. So tell me a little bit about your background, how you ended up starting your own company, which is 3 years in for a startup, which is kind of like a significant milestone. Like if you make it past the 3 year point,
Yeah,
things start to get you get a little confidence at that stage.
yeah, no, sure thing. Well, great to be with you. Thanks for having me on your show. Looking forward to it. And yeah, maybe just by ways of introduction, and I think we can. I'd love to also unpack how sort of the hobbies and work collide. I sort of have my own story there, and it's kind of evolved over a period of time. But yeah, just by ways of sort of quick background, Amberflow.io, we enable businesses to charge and track on usage. So we provide a cloud metering and usage-based pricing and billing platform. I'm sure we'll have a chance to dive into that a little bit more. And yeah, Amberflow.io, we're now about 3 years in, and the company was started actually, I think, what was being called for a period of time, born in the COVID era. So
Right.
we're one of those, and I think that's a good part of our story. And what that means is, when we started the company, we were in the lockdown back in 2020, and we raised a seed round. We did not get to meet our investors face to face for about another year. The whole round was done on Zoom online.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's so some interesting artifacts and outputs of that lockdown era. But the lockdown I think served in some unique ways, interesting ways, actually beneficial to startup like us. So, anyways, there's stuff there, but yeah, the company's about 3 years old. We're venture back. We raised two rounds of funding, a seed round, and then earlier this year we had raised an A round. So we've got about $20 million in funding. But yeah, like you said, off to a good start, off to a decent start. A lot of things have to connect in the journey of a startup, especially early, as you called out. Yeah, 3 years in, I think there's momentum building. We like to say we're seeing some tailwinds on our backs, and I attribute that just to a good, healthy combination of maybe a few things that we got right, but also a lot of things that the market is that are happening in the market organically. Market's turning in this direction, and we're definitely benefiting from that.
Right on. Yeah, I've spent pretty much my entire career working for startups, and one of the things that I've learned about startups in that period is that for most of the startups that are successful in the long term, the product that makes them successful is not actually the product that they start with. And I love using the aviation industry as an example of this because it's something that's a new enough industry that we can kind of visualize what the beginnings were like, but it's also been around long enough that we can see what happens at scale over time. And if you think about like when the Wright brothers launched their first airplane in, what was it, like 1903, I think, they probably didn't have any idea of what modern aviation would look like. And how it's iterated and how it's just impacted everyone. So they had to the industry as a whole had to pivot along the way. So have you seen that in your company? Like, what was your initial idea versus what's working for you right now?
Yeah, that's yeah, you're gonna take us down a little bit of a memory lane, and also a little bit of sort of the founding thesis that we had, which which was I guess it's still obviously playing out, but I want to say somewhat contrarian to the typical startup lens that perhaps you might see outside in looking inside Silicon Valley. So yeah, let's go into that, and I'll certainly index on that. So, uh, we'll talk a lot about, like I said, we feel that the world is shifting. There's a change in business model, how, in the business models of businesses, right? So, monetization model, how companies are increasingly selling their products and service. They're shifting to what we call a usage-based model versus a seat-based, and
Hmm.
that's a foundational shift. Like I like to say, business models don't change very often, Will. And we can look back from the dawn of software, whatever that is, 60, 70 years ago. I think at best, maybe if you had one, people refer back to the subscription model. And I would even challenge that. I think there was more sort of financial optics change rather than a full-on technology business model change. This one is going from something that was fixed and recurring to a full-on metered usage-based model. That's a foundational shift. Okay. How does sort of this play back to how we looked at things and how things have evolved? So what I was referring to earlier, I don't know, and I may be off, but I think generally one of the things that has sort of been less exciting in the world of startups in Silicon Valley is I think there's sort of this templatized approach where find a niche, you know, almost like a feature. Maybe the transition point is it already existed on prem, and you figure out a way to deliver it in the cloud. And you quickly build a company and a product behind it, and off you go. And then it's a race to ARR and MRR. And then, in 10 years, you aim to get to 100 million in ARR and you sell for a couple of billions and kumbaya. Okay. And obviously, nothing wrong with that. I mean, that itself takes, you know, sweat and blood and whatnot. Our view is slightly different. We dreamed to imagine a little bit bigger than that, and some of that was just a function of what we saw. So I think maybe I'll put some credibility into the statement. I mean, you're looking across, across the screen. I'm a little bit of an old hand at technology. I've been around the block. It's just as you have. I got 25 years under my belt in tech before I decided to drop everything and go do the startup. So it wasn't just trying to chase a wave. And this is what we're doing here at Amberflow. I call it sort of as a labor of love because it's all passion driven, it's all vision driven. And this is kind of going into then the question you asked. So we foresaw that we like to say sort of in the fullness of time. So already, kind of taking a long-term view, and the fullness of time is at least 5 years out, more like 10 years out. If you want to talk about, thesis 10 years out, that's a comfort zone for me. So because as we said, if there's a shift in the monetization business model, this is going to play out over a period of time. You're not
Right.
just going to Monday morning and flip a switch and change your business model. It's going to ripple through every functional area of your business. And maybe the confidence comes from, personally, I've been a little bit lucky. I've spent some time at AWS, at Amazon. I think it's one of the companies that is credited and known for some long-term thinking. And I think it's evident for how they've played out over the last couple of decades. So got to be in that environment, so comfortable with that thinking process. I think maybe I draw my confidence from there. And then a function of I think what we see in the market, like if this is the change that's happening, then well, there is a lot of opportunity here over the next 5 to 10 years. So that is the starting point. Now it goes to your question. Okay, so if that's how we're looking at it, then we still have to build a business. We still have to go to market. So then what is the launch pad? So we are looking at it from that lens. We have a very specific, well understood or well projected view of the long term. We're here in this for the long term. 5 10 years out, we see a technology stack. I think that's going to evolve. That's going to adjust. That's going to innovate, and we're seeing tremendous levels of opportunity for Amberflow to play into that transition. Okay. Starting point is, as a startup, you kind of have to gravitate where, at least in the short term, the narrative is, so you can at least start to connect the dots, find product market fit, and start to build the business and start to kind of go after that. So for us, the big opportunity that we saw was in building a new platform technology artifact that we call metering. However, uh, not many folks, at least even 3 years ago, were talking much about metering.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's a brand new concept to me.
Yeah, right. So there you go, right? So it was somewhat orthogonal. I mean, we are motivated by what metering is and what metering can do today and out 5 years and 10 years. Okay, that is really what gets us up in the morning. And usage-based pricing and billing is then simply an artifact, is sort of means to an end, if you view, right. So it's just one of the benefactors of metering. If you want to get, we like to say, if you want to get usage-based pricing and billing right, you must first get metering right. So that's sort of our view. So we spend really sort of the first year of our existence just heads down, nothing but building the metering service. And metering is a heavy lift. Part of it is not that well understood, as you said, called out. There are not that many blueprints of how to effectively build a metering service at scale. What are some of the design tenets and thesis? So it is a heavy lift. We spent the year building a metering service. Then we layered an application on top of metering that we call billing cloud, so usage-based pricing and billing. And that's our go-to-market motion today. So we feel with this approach, we're going to continue to expand. We don't consider ourselves a single product company. We're going to be a multi-product company by our genesis, by our design. And that's the foundation we laid.
Right on. So help me understand what, like, if I want to think about things from a metering perspective, what am I looking at that? Does that translate to like figuring out how to spend or how to track how much time someone spends in my application or what actions they're taking and turning that into a monetized metric?
That is precisely that, but there's more to it. Okay, so that is certainly so. So think of metering. It is really sort of that Swiss Army knife. Actually, let me even take a step back. So uh, one is, why isn't there that much level of awareness? I mean, we're about 10, 15 years into the cloud journey, and we're now talking about, yeah, okay, I've heard of it, but yeah, let me sort of come full circle, and then we can unpack sort of the Swiss Army knife. Why is this such a core piece? First, I'll maybe just start off by some evidence. If you look at all the companies out there today who have achieved a level of scale in the cloud, and of course, I'm not just talking about the 3 4 large cloud providers, but the next batch of companies like Twilio, Databricks, Mongo, Snowflake, right, and then increasingly on. I
Hmm.
think if you go and study those companies, you'll find that they have over time built an in-house metering service. So what I'm getting at is, once you find that you are native in the cloud, you're achieving a level of scale in the cloud, you cannot do without this construct. Okay? And I would even profess to go as far as saying that I think they, perhaps many of them, if not all of them, discovered this after the fact, and then they hurried to kind of get this instrumentation, this metering infrastructure put in place. And most of them have built themselves because, quite frankly, there wasn't one available off the shelf at the time.
Right.
Okay. So, what is it, right? This thing about metering. Well, metering, the term, of course, we all grew up with. I mean, it's the utility meter that's on the back of our homes. It's metering our usage. So there you go, usage metering. But let's take a step back. So why is it such an important construct in cloud, and why has it gone unnoticed for so long? Okay. Um, First is, let's look at. We all know cloud is elastic. Okay, that's a no-brainer. Everybody understands that, which basically means that you can dial up and dial down your backend resources, your
Hmm.
infrastructure resources. Okay. Um, then the question is, uh, if the backend is elastic, if I'm building in the cloud, which in the fullness of time everybody is, and you are building on a foundation, foundation platform that is elastic. I almost envision like a sort of a quicksand, like it's a little bit wobbly, right? It can go up and down, right? It can shift. Okay, so how do you tame elasticity? Because eventually you're going to have to build something that is solid. So usage, elasticity, and the artifact to tame elasticity is metering. Okay, so what is metering by definition? Metering tells you what is being used, by whom, when, what, where, how much. That's it. Put a box around it, right? Nothing to do with pricing and billing just yet.
Okay.
What is used in my cloud infrastructure, by whom, when, what, where, how much. That is the job of a metering service. It is the owner of that construct, meaning it is the source of truth. It is the system of record for what is being used by whom, when, what, where, how much. You have to, if you wish to scale and build a company in the cloud, you have to treat this box as sacrosanct. Okay. You cannot, this is not a data lake or a data warehouse where I munge it with this, or can I throw this in there, or can I throw that in there? You need to get this right, because uh, if you don't, and you try to do it through some other ways, then inevitably when somebody asks that question inside your company, and it will come from all functional areas, different functional areas, what is being used by whom? Sales wants to know, product wants to know, engineering wants to know, support wants to know, finance wants to know, accounting wants to know. When they're going to ask that question, if they ask a follow-up question, hey, is this data accurate? My friend, you do not have a metering service in place. Therefore, all of these companies over time woke up to the fact that, we got to solve this. We got to solve this once and for all. And there needs to be a system of truth, system of record for consumption data, for usage and consumption data that I can tap into. And there should not be a follow-on question: is this accurate, or is this correct? Right. And the reason why you can then tackle that question, because then because you treat it as a separate artifact. You give it its due diligence. You put the right infrastructure. You're not trying to balance it as a combination of observability or monitoring or logging or throwing it into a data lake and trying to So we can also unpack a little bit more on the architecture side. But that is the starting point. So you are on elastic backend infrastructure. The only way to claim elasticity is to put metering in place so you can see what is being used by whom, when, what, where, how much. Now, for companies who have been in the cloud for a while, and as we said, sort of in this fullness of time, you will find, and then what is this genesis of usage-based pricing and billing? Companies are discovering that, if my backend is elastic, the cost goes up and down based on usage. My front end also has to be elastic. What I mean by that, my front end, is how then you sell your products and services also will need to be elastic, so that you can align your front end use to your back end elastic infrastructure. And that's basically the cloud. Well, I mean, the optics of the cloud. So that is what led to usage-based pricing in the first place. It is a heavy lift. You have to put this instrumentation in place. Uh, there's a lot of it's product and engineering work. So unlike traditional seat-based pricing plans, where just after the fact come up with some arbitrary number that's high enough that gives you a margin ratio, okay, then off you go. No, here you have to do this instrumentation. You have to know what is it that you're consuming on the back end, what your customers are consuming on the front end, and that alignment and that visibility needs to be there. So metering does that. Okay.
I got you. I kind of feel like there's a light bulb going off over my head, because this is a problem that I faced at several of the startups that I worked with, where we have our infrastructure and we track, monthly active users, and then have the question posed to us by the next round of investors of, does this scale? What does your revenue and your profit margin look like at that scale? And to be honest, in many cases, we just took a wild guess and said, "Oh yeah, it's definitely scales, and margins will look like this." But metering is actually the simple math calculation that allows you to accurately predict what your infrastructure cost will be at a given level and what your prices have to be at that point to be turning a profit.
Totally will. In fact, just for your audience, I don't even take my word for it. I think they will find credibility in this. One of uh, the hidden uh, sort of the secrets of the success of AWS, certainly the pioneer leader in the cloud, um, is on the backs of the metering service, right? I mean, if I was there in the early days as a GM, had a chance with the team to build and launch a couple of tier one AWS services. Um, this you're not running a cloud business unless you have a metering service outputting this data on a daily basis, pretty much on a real time basis. And that is what why the company continues to grow and was on such a rapid pace of innovation. Let me actually give another anecdote, actually empirical data for your audience. So I'd like, for all you folks to think about this. I don't know what, maybe 200 plus different AWS services over the last 10 years, 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
You are not going to find a single one, not a single one, where they had to retract the pricing model for that they didn't get it right at the outset.
Oh, that's a fair point. That's a really good point. Um, Typically, you can count on AWS pricing going down over time, but I can't recall a single instance where prices have actually increased.
Well, not just increase. What I'm saying is, to get the model, like, they sort of had a mea culpa. Oops, this is not what we intended. We didn't think it through. We're going to charge it not this way, but this way.
Hmm.
So they have consistently every time gotten the model correct, whatever new service that they've brought on, and they're innovating up and down the stack, right? Infrastructure, platform as a service, more and more increasingly applications, right? So what I'm getting at is it's not an accident. It's not like, they've got all the smart people under the sun, anything like that. No, there's a framework, there's a methodology. Metering service is basically bubbling up the intelligence, the data, and they're constantly looking at that. IVAs, all managers, GMs, and people who are building new things and existing artifacts are constantly looking at this data, and data is informing what is your customer facing price points, where should we dial that up, and is it time to now give a discount? What are the usage patterns? Like I said, what is being used by whom, when, what, where, how much? Okay. So metering is the backbone for cloud operations.
Right on. So my background, infrastructure based, I typically think about scale and utilization in terms of CPU, memory, network bandwidth, all very foundational compute metrics. What's the what's the shift there to go from thinking about traditional infrastructure to metering based? What different things do you have to start thinking about and start tracking?
Great question. Yeah, so this comes up also quite a bit. Okay, so almost everybody will have, yeah, you open your eyes, you want to start writing first, second lines of code for whatever idea, application, business you're building. There's a checklist of things. You're gonna drop in some kind of a monitoring tool. You're gonna drop in some kind of a logging tool, and maybe soon thereafter you're gonna look to maybe get some kind of an observability the moment you stand up some infrastructure. Okay, all of that great stuff needed. Here's the thing, right? So. Uh, because metering hasn't quite caught up to that checkbox, as we said, inevitably, and at the end of the day, it is also a event ingestion pipeline. So in that regard, it is a close cousin to the artifacts of observability or monitoring because it's basically event ingestion. But here's the kicker. Here's the difference. So here's why, again, all these companies ended up building a metering service, certainly at AWS and other large cloud providers and others that we discussed. Metering events, meter has to have attribution to who is it, on whose behalf is this event for. Okay. So, unlike, let's say, logging, which is, of course, tracking your functions and, did it execute and whatever, metering is about usage. So meter events will, by design, have to have an attribution. This usage event is on behalf of this person, customer, partner, system, cluster, whatever that is that you want to attribute that to. So that then sort of has to, I like to say, sort of levels a little bit further up the stack, right? Because at the logging level, you may not always have that attribution, right?
Hmm.
Logging, basically, function a lot of times, um, like observability or APM, it's done on the back end, just parsing through the Java stack. So metering is a little bit of a higher level artifact. You need to have that attribution. So then it puts you into the SDK and API layer, and you have to put it into your stack where either as part of your control plane or as part of your data plane, so you can attribute on whose behalf this is happening. Uh, Let me give a little bit more clarity to this. So, uh, there's a whole fringe economy that has stood up on the backs of the cloud provider's bill, which is now cloud cost management.
Right.
So, um, you know, the intention is good, right? But I would challenge that one, the problem has not been fully solved, and I think the methodology is fundamentally flawed. And I'll further highlight this distinction between metering and some of the other observability monitoring. So, uh, whole bunch of I quite frankly I'm interested in seeing if there's one out there, but I think all the companies that I've seen cloud cost management, the first thing they'll have you do is log into, give them your cloud provider's credentials. They'll suck in the bill, and they'll start parsing it and all of that. I'll put this um, sort of thesis forward. At least when I was at AWS, and I think, and this is factual, this is how it is even today, and it was even before I got there. uh, and this is general knowledge. Amazon, AWS in particular, maniacal about cost, saving costs, uh, operational efficiency. Right, this is not a secret. They're written about it. They talk about it. It's part of their culture. It's part of their leadership principles. It's a core thing. Every year, when you come in and you present the plan for the next year, you have to have a chapter in your uh, planning for next year on how you plan to take cost out of operations, how you plan to become more efficient. I can categorically tell you, Will, you think I used to wait for my bill, AWS bill to show up, and then sort of parse through that and come up with my strategy and how I'm going to take cost out of my cloud operations?
No, probably not.
That's right. I had a metering service that I could lean on that was telling me what is being used by whom, when, what, where, how much. I don't need to go to anybody in accounting. I don't need to go to anybody in finance. I don't need to wait for the bill to show up. I had a metering service, and the metering service is a data warehouse, and I can tap into the data warehouse based on existing artifacts, dashboards, and my own access into that. And I had visibility even before the salespeople knew who was using what on my service. That is cloud operations for you. So notice, in the context of business, right? So yes, this is not an either or. I mean, our engineering teams, of course, had logging and monitoring and visibility, as like you rightfully said. There's a need for that. Observability will track: are you up? Are you up? Are you down? Are you down? And within that, yes, they will tell you, okay, how hot are you running? Are you at 90%? Are you at 70%? There's a need for that. Metering is telling me this user logged in, stayed on this instance for this long. This user, not the instance, this user, this customer, logged in, used this instance for this while, then logged out, or then shut it down, right? I have that correlation between who. And that is what metering is answering for, right? And that basically drives me forward as a business. I leverage that into my operations to the extent I can.
So it literally is the electrical meter on the back of your house. So the electric company can see exactly which household used how much service.
It's exactly that, and that's why it's magical, because yeah, that's where the term metering comes from. It's something that cloud providers invented. It's not something AWS. The term, metering. Yes, this is an infrastructure. As we said, it's elastic. It will go up and down. People will dial it up and down. Hey, we cannot be flying blind on this. We AWS themselves need to know first and foremost who is using what and how much. before they can do anything and go anything further, or build anything on top of it. So for them, this is a first class citizen, so to speak, right? Metering, if there's a hiccup on the metering service inside AWS, one, there will never be. I mean, the house will come crashing down. It's like step one. There's a beacon that shows up, like a red beacon that starts to spin. Internal dashboards, so which basically tells you that, yeah, open up your sleeping bag. You're not going home. Okay.
Right.
So, but yeah, it is that critical. Uh, Everything, and so it's precisely that, and therefore, and now you think about, okay, so how come then we have come along this far, 10, 15 years into cloud, and of course, many businesses have built successful businesses, and some maybe today do not have metering services, and they're doing reasonably well. I called out, the ones who really achieved a level of scale ultimately have built a metering service, but there are
Hmm.
many who have not. And I think the reason for that is, well, I think, why it has gone on for so long, but why from day one, cloud providers had it, because they had no business if they didn't have metering service started on day one. A couple of things. One is, I think that the business context was perhaps missing, right? So, of course, ultimately, everything is driven inside an organization, particularly started, it's a classic old resource allocation discussion. Okay, priorities. So, well, you could do a lot of things. Okay, what are the things that we do first? So, the business narrative was perhaps missing, and the business narrative comes in the form of usage-based pricing and billing, right? So that is the wake-up call, because you may be running a large cloud business today, but if your go-to-market is not usage-based, then the business need, like I said, the business operational need for what is being used by whom, when, what, where, how much, never really came to the surface. And therefore, the engineering and product teams never built or needed to build a metering service. And therefore, they have gone on this long, even though they're running successful businesses in the cloud, without having a metering service. The moment, so the business context was missing. Now, in the world of AWS and other cloud providers, some already had the foresight. So they did it from day one, and they have grown with it because they knew that they could not do it otherwise, because their pricing plans were usage based from day one. So you will find that any company that launched day one on usage based, this is guaranteed well, you will find a metering service there. Okay. So the ones now who are shifting to the model of usage basis, they are going to discover. And I think we're seeing increasingly, when I say we got tailwinds, we're finding more and more people are sort of nodding their head. Yeah, I need this artifact. In fact, some are asking for it by name now. So still relatively early, but give it another year, 2 years, 3 years, this becomes a checkbox item for a cloud native system.
Yeah, just thinking through like the evolution of software, I think I see how this becomes the path, because if we go back, 20 years ago, if you needed a copy of Microsoft Office, you went down to the local computer store and you bought, if you're old enough, you bought it and brought the floppy disk back to your computer. And then when modern technology hit, you went and bought the CD. And then whenever they went to an online business model, it's still the same business model for them, where you're paying for a seat of Microsoft Office. But now with everything available on demand, a lot of companies are seeing increased competitors, because the ability to launch a competitor, or the barrier to launch a business, is so much lower now. And so you have to find different ways to be competitive. And one of the ways is to accurately price your product based on utilization. And then how do you measure utilization? Well, that's the metering aspect of it. So to me, it feels like there's a natural path to this.
Totally. And companies will swear by it. Like I would, I think if you take anybody from AWS leadership, take them aside and say, hey, tell us, what are some of the core things that you got right in the early days? It's inevitable, they'll say we got metering right. Because you can't be flying blind and just on a whim and how to grow in business. So 100% yes. And I think the other things, why we are so bullish, but I think more than that, now there's ample evidence and data that's sort of backing this thesis. So the shift to usage-based pricing and billing, I think you actually just kind of going down that path, right? So how do you stay competitive? Um, it's cloud computing's obviously leveled the playing field in terms of giving access to technology infrastructure. Earlier you needed $5 million just to kind of buy Oracle and a bunch of other things to even get started. So it's been a great leveler. I mean, a couple of guys in the garage can put out just as much, than any other company. So it's all about time to market ideas. So in that realm, how do you stay competitive? And I think people are finding that it's given that you're going to have competitors, others are going to come into your space. So within that, how do you bubble to the top? And there's this whole thing being talked about called PLG, product-led growth, or basically taking friction out from user adoption, from customer adoption, right? Making that whole process a little bit more and more streamlined, more and more easy, and sort of the right combination of self-service and kind of getting the customer situated to a point where and they know that, yeah, this is the right product for me. And then
Mhm.
maybe in sales and you kind of take it forward from a cross-sell, upsell perspective. So this thing is loosely being talked about, I think, in the realm of PLG, product-led growth. And this is, again, how, all of this is in going in the realm of being competitive, getting out ahead. Customers have a lot of choices because they have a lot of choices, but they don't have a lot of time. Everybody has still 24 hours in the day, but the choices are many. So companies will have to figure out how do you put yourself in the shoes of your customers or users. They're only going to have limited time in terms of trying to evaluate your product because there's five others they need to look at. So how do you make it easy? And again, metering is the underlying foundation if you want to successfully build a PLG motion. Think about it. And again, this is, well, so obvious, but sometimes not intuitive. I like to sort of joke, who's the biggest PLG provider on the planet? It's AWS, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes people say, yeah, well, my product is not conducive to a PLG motion. It needs sales team right from the get-go. I don't know. I mean, I look at 300 services under the umbrella inside AWS up and down the stack, and there's so many complicated services there. Well, they're all in PLG motion, right? You get customers in, get them to start using something, give them a good experience, and the whole idea is uh, usage-based pricing and billing. The idea is you take friction points out as they start to scale. Give them a path to grow. I mean, why you want to get in the way if they are naturally, organically growing? Just let them grow. And then the artifact that will allow you to do that is a usage-based model, right? So it's not a seat-based because seat-based has these step functions. Somebody has to call somebody to go from 10 users to 20 users. But if it's a usage-based, hey, I like your product. I'll keep using. I'm inviting others in the company. Great, just start using it. Later, you can come in with the sales team and maybe offer a longer-term contract or do some promotion discount. You can kind of get commitment. Yeah, so that's, and then again, how do you enable this? You got to have a metering artifact that is tracking again which customers are landing, who's using how much, where are they in my free tier or free trial, and then where's the usage footprint, and what are the friction points. So it's really the backbone for sort of modern even business models and business outlook.
Yeah, and from a product perspective, like the metering data to me seems like it would be really, really useful in understanding what parts of your product are resonating with your users, because that's one of the challenges of a startup is you build your product and then you have to figure out, like one of the things I frequently say is when you launch your product, you have to figure out what the difference between what you built and what the customers thought you built was and close that gap. And metering seems like, if done correctly, it's going to just point that out like a beacon.
They're totally correct. In fact, a little bit of a good segue. So about the name Amberflow, let me tell you how sort of that came about. I think your audience might find this intriguing. Uh, so what I grew up, or for the time I was at AWS, the way I sort of internalized, when I got understood, metering and how we were building services, and then how we launched and the whole usage-based business model, how it drove organic growth and adoption. The vision I had in mind is, if you think about metering as we've talked about, and we talked about that it is essentially an event stream. right? But it's an event stream. Those events are really your coins of gold. It's like a river of money that's flowing, right? Because what is being used by whom, when, but where, how much. So the term amber flow comes from amber, so the color of gold. By the way, amber is also the bright sky in Sanskrit, and the flow is the river. So that's sort of how just the concoction kind of came together, because that's really what it is. Metering is that river of your business, your gold, your money, your usage, and
Yeah.
how can you operate without giving it its true diligence and resources, and making sure that it's intact and scaling. Uh, yeah,
Right on. I love that analogy. You can just reach down into the amber flow and scoop out however much you want.
that's right. You know,
That's
occasionally,
great.
so and that's quite frankly that's how it is with most all cloud providers. This is the service that tracks, and whether your product, service, customer team, they're all leveraging this data set.
Yeah, and like the like the, you've mentioned a couple times that most companies end up building their own metering service because a service didn't exist. But I can only imagine the number of questions that you have to answer to get the metering service right. So in terms of Amberflow, like what's an onboarding experience look like there? What does a potential user of Amberflow need to know in order to onboard with Amberflow?
Yeah, yeah, another great question. So let me actually just I thought of something back to further sort of distinction, because I'm sure, okay, if you are an engineer product or engineering side, okay, you're thinking, yeah, but okay, I still have questions. Why cannot I still do it through monitoring? Why cannot I
Hmm.
still do it through observability? Because we grew up that way, right? So
Right.
and one of the things as well, as humans, it's how's the best way to say that, uh, sometimes um, we just like to see things from the lens that we're comfortable with, right? So we've grown up with
No, say it isn't so.
so, and but that's just how it is. So anytime you're gonna come across something new, you're gonna right away try to see, yeah, but do I really need it? Is it really that different? So there's a period of where anytime you launch something new, we as the company or the institution that's bringing that, you have to be prepared to be misunderstood for some period of time. That's totally okay. And I think if you look back at any times, also there's a great adage that I've read somewhere, all inventions seem impossible until they're invented, and then they seem inevitable, right?
Right.
I just this one I just it's I lean on this quite a bit. I think that's just how things are. But anyway, so one of the things about metering is, and also answer a question. So how do we onboard customers and what they ask for? We do still get asked, hey, look, I already have an ingestion pipeline. I'm doing it through logging, or I'm doing it through monitoring, I'm doing it through XYZ. And fair enough, I can even try to uh, get it so I can try to catch the attribution aspect of it, and I can adjust the schema and whatnot. Here's the problem with that, and this resonates. See, if we align on, as we did, what the job of metering is to give you that insight, what is being used by whom, when, what, where, how much, but also to do it accurately and consistently. Okay. Now let's work our way backwards to how we can guarantee that accuracy. And the reason why then you need to have a separate metering service. See, uh, from the time where the event originates that you wish to track, could be an IoT event, could be a system event, could be an EC2 event, could be a storage event, could be an API event. From wherever the event is originating, if the event has done multiple hops, by the time it gets to your monitoring logging service, and then within that service, it has done multiple hops, and then you say, yeah, I have the event, use it for pricing and billing, you may be able to get by for a little bit
Hmm.
till somebody on the other end says, I don't trust this bill. Tell me, unpack the events that got me to this metered bill. Now you have a problem because who is going to take ownership of that remediation? And this is very typical. We see this all the time, and companies trip over this, unfortunately, even after the fact that they've decided to go usage-based pricing and billing till they encounter their first outage or this first hiccup. And then you scramble, one person from finance and one from accounting and one from product and one from support and one from engineering. And okay, what happened? Well, we don't know. Well, it went to this system, and then from this system, it went to this system. It came into the data warehouse, and then we did ETL, and then it went to relational, and then we did this. Somewhere the event got dropped. You have basically lost lineage. If you have lost lineage, you cannot back credibility of the bill. Metering guarantees you that lineage. Therefore, the design thesis and the deployment model for metering is put metering as close as possible to where the original event is originating. Get that event as quickly as directly into the metering service. And if you eliminate these hops, because metering guarantees you, if somebody's offering you a metering service as a product service solution, you have to take them down the path. Hey, walk me through how you guarantee me accuracy. And they should be telling you some of the things that I'm outlining now. That yeah, this is what we do. We have an SDK. We have a set of API. We request that you put the metering as close as possible to where the event is originating. So the sooner it gets into the metering service, we guarantee any potency, data deduplication. We are the system of record. And then anytime there is a question about the charge or the aggregated aspect, you can look at it backwards. So that
Gotcha.
is the job of metering service. And you're not going to find that in ETL tools or observability monitoring. They were just not designed for this purpose. If you miss a log or two, Will, nothing wrong with it, right? Same thing for observability. Metering,
Yeah. So like in the past, we would do things like annotate the logs, annotate them with a GUID, and that GUID could be associated with a specific sequence of actions. But then, even whenever it comes time, like you said, to prove it, you have to go to all of these disconnected systems and search for that GUID and hope it was there and that nothing happened and that it's able to be stored in a format where you can parse and search by that. And so the metering service is a completely different shift so that it's an external thing that its sole job is to just store that data so you don't have to try and annotate it at every piece of your infrastructure along the way.
exactly. And you do it once, and you're set for life. And
Yeah,
because and therefore the reasons why, and then again, why you went down the path of GUID and all that, and why you didn't think of a metering service, because the business demand was not there. Maybe once in a while that request came up, right? Or once in a while, and then it was really more engineering request and a support request rather than a customer accounting revenue issue, right? That has
for
to be
sure.
solved. Like, you cannot just charge somebody a wrong amount. That is just fact. You get called out for that, right? So you have to do accurate billing. You can only charge for what is owed to you. Um, so those are federally mandated statutes. So therefore now there's this onus that is coming down to product and engineering teams. And this may not be just a one-off thing that we might hear once in every 6 months or something, and it's okay. We can scramble some resources and do that. I mean, some customers might just want to ask, hey, give me visibility into, did I actually use this much? And like Amberflow system will give you the full lineage of the entire metered bill. You track it all the way back, and you want to send them a list of those events that aggregated into the invoice. Have at it. It's right there at your disposal.
Right on. That's cool. That's cool. And so I'm assuming that Amberflow is the pricing model of that is a metered service.
Yeah. So we do, like I said, so we have. We're proud of this fact, the world's most rich, full-featured, fully managed cloud metering service at scale. Yeah. We're proud of the fact, One of our larger customers today already sending us 4 billion meter events a day on our metering. That's
Oh,
just in the
wow.
okay. And because they get it, like, they are shifting lock, stock, and barrel, everything, the entire product portfolio to usage based pricing and billing. It starts with accurate metering. Accurate accuracy is key. So events come into Amberflow raw events. They get aggregated. They get sliced over time stream, and now you have a system of usage of what is being used by whom, when, what, where, how much. So that is our metering service. We view our metering service as a platform, horizontal platform service. And then on top of that, we offer you what we call our billing cloud, which is what we consider an application that sits on top of the metering platform. Our billing cloud then gives you all the customer facing artifacts for you to build flexible usage based pricing plan. You want to charge on APIs, you want to charge on a tiered model, you want to then charge on prepaid, you want to charge on commits, you want to do promotions, discounts. And our billing cloud then generates on demand, real time metered invoicing and billing. So that's how the platform comes together.
Wow. That's cool. That's super impressive.
Yeah. And it's taken a while, and therefore, like, we got started talking, about 3 years in. Yeah, we were at least for about a year and a half just in core development. I mean, this is something that uh, credit to my early investors. We were upfront with them about this. That, hey, as I was telling you earlier about sort of the Silicon Valley story, that this is not a fly by night thing. We're in not 4 months. Don't come asking us. What is the ARR? It's going to take us a while to build.
Right.
And this is like uh, I'm really kind of wrapped up around this because I think a lot more innovation could be happening. As I think if just the Silicon Valley was perhaps a little bit more open to. It takes time. It takes time to build something that is differentiated, that is sustainable. And I say that again. Look, uh, I was the GM for Amazon Cloud Search, one of the services. And then later, our team also launched Amazon Elasticsearch, which is now called Amazon OpenSearch.
Hmm.
Cloud Search took 2.5 years to build before we saw the light of day, before we got our first beta customer. Okay.
Wow.
And that's at Amazon scale, Will.
Yeah.
Redshift, my good friend, Anurag Gupta, who is also running a startup, Redshift took uh, over 3 years before it saw the light of day. And therefore these are now multi-billion-dollar businesses inside AWS. You want to think big, you want to do something big. Um, it takes time. It takes time to think this thing through and build that full set of uh, capabilities that will be differentiated, that will be meaningful. So anyhow, so that's sort of been our story. I'm glad to say that we found alignment in the investor that we got, who understood and was willing to play a little bit of a different playbook than a traditional startup.
Yeah, congratulations for sure on that because that is not your average investor who's willing to invest for a long investment or a long payoff like that. It's
Yeah,
it's something we've gotten spoiled with over the last, I don't know, 20 years, and I think I think that's very short-sighted. Like you mentioned, these some of these products take a long time to build, and you have to be very disciplined and focused in what you're trying to build to commit to holding back the release date until you have the product that does what you know it should be doing.
that's right, Will. Yeah, and I think especially in tech, particularly in software, right? Because there are few things that if you don't get it right from the outset, you just cannot go back and revisit, right? You know this better than anybody else, right? So that is the thing, and that's why it's a combination of right environment, support from leadership, uh, because if you feel pressure to just go, I got to launch, okay, I raise money, I got to go and start showing some ARR in 4 to 6 months, you're gonna shortcut on those choices,
Yeah.
and you can never go back and revisit them. And one of the things that we wanted to do, and I'll share this sort of with your audience, a little bit of our sort of internal uh, IP and thesis. So, we talked about the whole lineage of the events and all of that, right? Now, you know what? Well, so well, I've given you that picture. So I'm offering as a vendor a metering service, right? And it's basically a like an AWS style, quote unquote, a black box. Yeah, I guarantee you, you send me the raw event and outcome, I'll send you the aggregated view, and we are the system of record, and you can lean on my service, and you can hold us accountable for the accuracy. Okay, we make that guarantee. So now, uh, if you are for a moment inside my company and you're in a product and engineering discussions, well, we still have the same problem to solve internally, right? I mean, if my architecture is 10 different things and things are going, there's different artifacts, I still have to manage this lineage and an audit trail of the event. So what is that architecture, right? And and that's why uh, having the right ecosystem, partners, investors, team, technology, product, and engineers is really that unique combination. So, what I'll share with you is, look, you can put some very smart engineers together and say, hey, let's go architect a metering service, right? Now, you come from technical background and say, okay, so what is a metering service? Well, it's an event ingestion system, so I'm going to need a Kafka. Okay, so let's put a Kafka in place. Well, there's data flowing in, so I'm going to need a data warehouse. Okay, so let's put that in place. Well, there's some state management, and then there's a few other things that I'm going to have to kind of connect. So I'm going to need to have a relational database for sort of quick response. I'm going to put a relational database in place. Okay, and you would come up with a pretty good metering service. Well, uh, I can share with you that we don't use any of that, and there's a reason for it, right? And it's not just put a chip on my shoulder, but what is it that you're after, or what is it that you're designing? See, this is what I'm referring to. What is the core tenet? What is the design thesis? What is your ultimate long-term goal? Our ultimate long-term goal is what I've already outlined with you and your audience. That we are going to be the metering service for this planet. You have a metering need for a metering service. I am telling you right now, and if I fall short on this, you can just call me out, and any one of your audience can write to me. We are going to be the best, most feature-rich, the best price performant metering service you can find on this planet today and into the future. That's my promise to you. I say that looking you straight in the eye. Guaranteed for now and into the future. You know why I can say that? For what I was just planning, because that is been our vision from day one, and we have architected for that growth. We have architected for that from day one. That's why we have not used a data warehouse. We have not used a Kafka. You know why? These are not cloud native primitives. These are on-prem primitives that have been ported to the cloud. They have a step function. You're going to end up with a pretty big blast radius with these artifacts. And the list is endless. You are going to have a huge cost function if you're bringing this to your architecture. Basically, what that means is that you're going to have a limit on scale. Right? Costs are going to be off the roof. This is what I refer to like these design concept cannot be revisited once you have baked in your architecture.
Right.
These are day one design decisions. Cannot be revisited on day two. Once you have decided to go with a Kafka and a data warehouse, this is it. You're not going to go. So we made a conscious choice. Our architecture is what we call cloud native. We basically built a meter file storage system from the ground up over S3 without using a Kafka, without using a data warehouse, and people are just blown away. But on the surface, we give you the same thing. You can fire a query on our system as you would if an architecture was built on the backs of a data warehouse or relational. And in fact, we're actually even faster and better.
No kidding.
Yeah. And
That's crazy.
therefore, the customer I talked to you about, 4 billion meter events, they don't have a hiccup. I mean, and they're realizing, my God, this is just amazing. From a price performance perspective, from a feature perspective, right? And they're discovering more and more things inside the organization that they're just shooting in the head because this is great. That's a, so this is what I refer to, like, this is design thinking. This is holding, being true to what is it that you're going after. And I'm just really, really lucky. And that's what, gets us, and a few of us who came together to start the company in the early days, a couple of my fellows from AWS and others. This is what gets up in the morning, because we were able to do this. And that's why it took us about a year and a half to get this right. But now we're starting to see some dividends. Absolutely.
Yeah, your passion in that, when you were talking about that, just like your passion just like really came through, and that was very, very cool to see, because
Yeah.
there's no disputing. Like, you can just hear it in your voice. There's no disputing what you said. You can just tell that you believe it with every cell in your body.
Yeah.
But another thing that stood out to me there was, one of the challenges a lot of companies face is your engineers building your product have to actually use that product to see it as your customers would see it. But that's just built into your business model. Like, you are 100% dependent on your own product for success as a company, because that's your, not, it's not only how you make your money, but it's how you bill your customers to make your money.
That's again a very astute observation on your part. 100% yes. By the way, and this was also something that was part of the excitement of starting this company. We thought this through. Hey, we're going to be Amberflow and Amberflow. That's how we call it internally.
Right.
So, and I'll also sort of connect the dots. Well, again, one of those things very obvious. Maybe some companies just kind of lucky in that regard. But I'll tell you where that awareness was there even before starting the company. Okay, it's easy to say, yeah, we knew it, but I'll actually even bring some credibility to that. When I got hired into AWS back in 2011, my charter was to build Amazon Cloud Search, which arguably was probably our first quote unquote PaaS service. Everything else was infrastructure, if you think about it, right? Compute, storage, EC2. So search is a little bit farther up the stack. And
Right.
so Cloud Search, internally, we were referring to Cloud Search was sort of the first PaaS service built natively, first PaaS AWS service that was built using AWS. Okay, so underneath Cloud Search, maybe different now, but back in the day, I think we were using 12 or 13 different AWS services.
Right.
Okay, to build that's what's going on behind the scene and Cloud Search. So this concept of first AWS service built using AWS. Uh, so I had some awareness that, and same thing here. So Amberflow and Amberflow, yeah, we start a day with our own daily dashboards that are being delivered to us from our metering service on what is being used by whom, when, what, where, how much from our customers.
Oh, that's so cool. And just to comment on OpenSearch real quick, I was very excited when that product released, because I had spent years prior to that managing my own Elasticsearch clusters, and running the JMX metrics, monitoring the heap stack, waiting for that node to crash so that I could detect it and replace it, and then trying to avoid the split brain and maintain availability. So to be able to just pay AWS money to get out of that business, I couldn't hand over my credit card fast enough.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's and that's been the foundation for many of the service. I mean, that's one of the template at AWS and other cloud providers, right? Open source, and then basically wrapping it into the cloud ecosystem.
Right on.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we are just crossing an hour here. So if our listeners are interested in learning more about metering or want to get in contact with you, what kind of resources have you got for them?
Yeah, sure thing. Well, so best is I'd invite you to just land on our website, www.amberflow.io. And a lot of information there. We have our full set of documentation, docs that are available to you. You can very quickly unpack what are these artifacts, what are some of the design patterns, how to engage with them. But please, as you're on the website, look around, drop us a note. Love to connect with you. If you are thinking about usage-based pricing and billing, no strings attached. I'm always happy to compare, share some notes, lessons learned. If you're already down the path of usage-based pricing and billing, happy to compare some notes if you're running into some friction areas and how you might streamline it. But yeah, welcome you to come back on our website.
Awesome. Well, this has been a really exciting conversation for me. It's been insightful, eye-opening, and I've really enjoyed it. So thank you for taking the time out of your day to join me here.
Oh, my pleasure, Will. It was very, very exciting for me. Just time just kind of went by.
It
So thank
did.
you. Yeah,
All right. Thank you. And thanks for listening, everyone. And we will see y'all in the next episode.
very good. Take care, guys.